I try not to think about sleep. Out here, the concept is more dangerous than exhaustion itself. I learned early to keep my relationship with it transactional. Another set of logs, another cycle, another scrap of pay transferred to an account I haven't checked in weeks. If you start wanting sleep, the Memphis route notices, and the route keeps its own accounts. The shift begins at 1940, local. I walk the membrane corridor that leads from my bunk in Memring to the sensor deck, and the dome's humidity breathes against my skin, a low, slow exhale. The habitat's been cut into the pre-Cambrian limestone beneath the city, 30 meters below the old Maglev 9 construction site. Memphis is above us. A web of steel, synthcrete, and blinking spires stretched along the Nile's artificial arteries, built over the ruins of Egypt's ancient capital. Some call it the world's oldest city. Now it's just another megacity on borrowed water and sun-mirrored sky, stitched together by arcologies and the ghosts of dynasties. They say the Maglev was supposed to keep people moving. Now it's just a cautionary tale, buried like the rest of us. Inside the dome, everything is always slightly too cold, the light dialed down to minimize photoreactive cascade from the thing we're here to study. That's what the official documentation calls it. The structure. Off record, we call it the root. Some call it the downward pyramid, the inversion, or just the memory. Nobody calls it a pyramid unless they want to get chewed out by a coil watcher. Security and compliance staff, always in black visors, always hovering near the sleep labs, watch for cognitive drift and mimetic breach vectors. They don't like you using legacy terminology, as if the wrong word could open the wrong door. Sometimes I think they're right. I badge through the checkpoint. The visor guy on duty, Salim, his name badge says, barely glances at me, which is how I like it. He taps a sequence on his slate, logging my presence. I see my reflection in his visor. Hazel grey eyes, red-veined and glassy, hair mashed flat from the neural mesh. My uniform sags at the elbows, stinking of sleep suppressant and silver residue from the Drem 9 cranial mask. I nod. He doesn't nod back. That's fine. If I blend in, I survive. There's a ritual I do, a leftover from my first year working veteran sleep clinics. I knock my thigh twice, quiet, under the console. Superstition, sure, but in a place where the air is dosed to keep you from dreaming, everyone's got their habits. Even the rational ones. The sensor cluster is a glassed-in pocket at the core of Memring. Bioform's nerve center, a warren of consoles, sleep pod monitors, and gloved techs hunched over neural telemetry. My job, if you want to get technical, is EEG technician grade 3B, what the engineers call a dream rat. I'm supposed to monitor neural activity for volunteers housed in proximity to the root, log any REM anomalies, and report upward if the logs go non-native. Non-native means a lot of things here. Sometimes it's a spike in delta wave activity that doesn't fit the model. Sometimes it's a phrase, muttered in sleep, in a dialect nobody's taught since the last dynasty. Sometimes it's a scar, appearing overnight in the skin, spiral-shaped or patterned like old temple reliefs. All of it gets flagged and shunted to the wet drives, a neural storage array grown from fetal stem tissue, supposedly immune to recursive contamination. Supposedly. I settle into my chair, put on my own Drem 9 mesh, a thin cap laced with chilled silver wires, the metal pricking where it seeps into my scalp. The mask's a marvel. It monitors brainwave activity in real time, suppressing the earliest REM signals with pulses of localized neuroinhibition. It logs everything to my personal wet drive. If I dream without permission, the system locks me out, sends a report. After a year of wearing it, I can still feel the phantom tingling when it's off, as if the mesh is sinking deeper with every shift. I check my console. 4 volunteers are in the pods tonight. 2 researchers, a junior engineer from JAXA, and one of the sleep monks, contracted from the El Minya order, their heads shaved, glyphs tattooed beneath the eyes, murmuring prayers that sound older than any I've ever heard. Their presence unnerves the others. They say the monks believe the root is a crypt for divine memory, not a fossil or artifact. They try to commune by fasting, scarring, and denying themselves sleep. Sometimes it works too well. Routine checks, neural baseline steady, respiration smooth, 0 dream events on the board. The junior engineer's mask reads high on stress, likely the proximity effect. The closer you are to the root, the more your body wants to sleep, even as your mind revolts. Bioform protocol calls it proximity-induced REM drift. The locals call it the pull. Most never last more than 2 cycles. I've been here 5 months. My hands hover over the logging interface and I double-tap my audio file, an 11-minute hum, recorded back in a Texas sleep study. I play it on loop, just under hearing. It keeps my world pinned in place. I can tell when it glitches, when something shifts in the background noise. I'm not superstitious, not officially, but I believe in patterns. I believe in warning signs. 20 minutes into the shift, the anomaly hits. I see it first in the monk's feed. His brainwaves shift, deep wave patterns surging, the mask stuttering as it tries to compensate. The console chirps. I lean in, watching as the volunteer's REM pattern overlays perfectly with the root's last recorded EM signature. A geometric spiral, mirrored in both frequency and amplitude. The mask's suppression fails for a moment. The monk begins to speak in his sleep. At first it sounds like glossolalia, syllables tumbling over each other, no meaning. But then the translation overlay. Glossoprime, Bioform's best attempt at real-time neural linguistics, flickers on screen. Instead of outputting text, it begins printing lines of poetry, formatted in an alphabet I don't recognize, its shapes writhing at the edge of sight. I feel the hairs on my arms rise. I glance through the viewport at the monk's pod. He's perfectly still, but sweat beads on his brow. On his forearm, beneath the mesh, I notice something. Fresh, spiraled scarring, raised and red, as if traced with a cautery stylus. I check the pod's internal camera. Nothing touched him. No breach, no movement, but his own breath. The virophage rig, a soft, living armor we all wear in high-risk zones, emits a rasping warning. Normally, it analyzes airborne spores and rogue proteins, guarding us from mnemonic contamination. Tonight it signals internal vector detected, which means the source is not environmental, but self-generated. I log the event. The system auto-tags it. Non-native REM, Memphis route, 0.7 kilometers from core. I note the scarring, the failed translation, the poet's code bleeding through my monitors. I'm supposed to flag the coil watchers, escalate, let them decide what to purge. But I don't, not right away. Instead, I jot down the spiral from the monk's skin on my notepad, habit more than reason. I want to see if it repeats. I think about the first time I saw this pattern. Not here. Years ago, in a dream I had after a double shift. I try to remember the details. Was it a corridor, a handprint, or just the feeling of being turned inside out? The harder I try, the more the memory slips away, replaced by a pressure in my chest. I knock my thigh twice, harder than usual. The console's hum stutters, then rights itself. Movement catches my eye, a reflection in the glass just behind me. For a moment I see myself older, hair thinner, a web of scars running from temple to jaw. He's staring at the pod, not at me. When I blink, he's gone. The hairs on my neck won't lie down. I force myself to breathe, slow, even. My shift ends in 2 hours, and the silence of the dome settles. Across the compound, power dims for the sleep cycle. The vigil shrine pillars begin their nightly hum. A soft, gene-tuned song to keep us from falling too deep. Some believe the biolamps can protect your soul from what waits below. Some say that's just another story we tell ourselves to make sense of the marks we wake up with. Overhead, a broadcast chimes. Attention! All dream monitors report anomalous recursion to admin at once. The voice is clipped, tense. The rumor mill's been grinding out stories for weeks. Personnel waking with memories of dying inside the root, sometimes speaking in languages no one living has ever known. False waking, they call it. Bioform treats it as a psych hazard, the monks as a sign of arrival. I just treat it like another checkbox on the incident form. I finish the report. As I file the log, I see something in the timestamp, a recurring sequence of numbers repeating from shift to shift. It looks almost like a coordinate, but inverted, as if mapping a descent instead of a location. I know better than to chase patterns down here, but the urge is strong. Maybe that's the root's trick. Give you just enough sense of the puzzle to think you can solve it, just enough memory to keep you from ever letting go. I lean back in my chair, pulse thudding in my ears, and close my eyes for a moment. I tell myself I'm not tired, that I'm only resting them. The truth is, I'm listening, waiting to hear if the hum of the shrine pillar will drown out the memory of my own breath, or if the root will reach up again, tugging at whatever's left of me that still dreams. I try not to think about sleep, but sleep is always thinking about me. I woke to the soft sting of silver threads peeling from my scalp. The Drem9 mesh had done its job. No dreams recorded, at least according to the system's report. But something lingered behind my eyes, a pressure like the ghost of a sound I could almost name. I stayed motionless in my bunk, thumb pressed hard to the bone of my knee, counting the rhythm of my breath as if it could anchor me in this particular morning. Memorying at dawn always felt wrong. Not just the dim, chill air and the chemical hum of the climate regulators, but the way people moved in the halls. There was a cautious choreography to the researchers and support staff here. Averted eyes, clipped nods, hands kept close to their bodies as if guarding secrets stitched into their palms. Sleep wasn't rest in this place. It was risk management. I dressed slowly, running fingertips along the old fabric seam of my shirt. There was a new itch just above my wrist, tender and slightly raised. Not a scar, just a rough spiral, as if I'd leaned into the wrong surface. I pressed it, hard. My own skin felt thin, as if whatever held me together was wearing out from the inside. By the time I made it to the galley, the news had spread. Not the official news. Those came via admin broadcasts, bland and delayed. But the real news, passed in urgent whispers over breakfast tubes. 2 security techs from the night shift had been called down to the new sublayer. A find, someone said, low. A body, not one of ours. Old. A find. You'd think people would be numb to it by now after months of unearthing things that shouldn't be buried here. But a body, intact, sealed away in the corridor nobody remembered mapping, was different. Living or dead, the root collected. And sometimes it returned what it collected in stranger forms. I pretended not to listen, but my ears pricked up at the word priest. One of the diggers from the antiquities rotation muttered that the corpse was upright, hands clasped, as if caught in the act of prayer or penance. Someone else swore the mouth had been packed with roots, actual fibers, not just dirt or decay. No one could explain how a priest in full ceremonial garb made it past clearance, let alone ended up beneath Layer 3, alone. The senior coil watcher, Officer Rashid, stalked through the galley in his mirrored visor, barking at the whisperers to report to their stations. A flicker of anger flashed in me, old, protective. But Rashid had the authority to erase logs, even memories, if he thought contamination was in play. I kept my head down, eyes on my cup. By my shift, the sensor deck felt sharper, like the air itself had grown teeth. New protocols. Every volunteer must be double-checked for unauthorized REM events, and any EEG outliers flagged for admin review. I checked the logs. One of last night's volunteers, the junior engineer, Mayu from JAXA, had registered a microburst of REM just outside her scheduled window. The Drem9 mask had suppressed most of it, but there was a moment where her readings matched the EM frequency the root had emitted 2 months ago during the initial breach. The same spiral pattern. Mayu was still in quarantine, monitored by 2 sleep techs and a virophage bio-rig programmed to alert at the first sign of internal mnemonic infection. That's what the new safety posters called it. Infection. Like it was something you could scrub out with bleach or cut away with enough nerve. I passed the glass partition of the medical wing and saw her curled in the hospital cot. Eyes open but unfocused, lips moving in slow, soundless repetition. The sleep monk was with her, face inked with hieroglyphic spirals, hands folded in the sleeves of his pale robe. He was humming, barely audible, a phrase that vibrated the glass. Dr. El-Khoury, lead on-site psychiatrist, met me in the corridor. Her eyes were as tired as my own, but sharper. "Price," she said, voice clipped. "Your logs from last night flagged a translation event. Poetry in a non-native script, tied to the monk's REM sequence. Has this happened before?" "Not in my rotation," I lied. The truth felt like a breach. There was some overlay, spiral symmetry, language drift. The virophage picked up internal signature. She gave me a look that said she'd heard enough half-truths to know a full one when it didn't arrive. "Keep an eye on your own patterns," she said. "You're susceptible, more than most." I wondered if she meant my flagged psych evals or something else. Maybe she saw the way I hovered near certain doors, the way I flinched when the biolamps started their nightly hum. Maybe she'd seen the spiral forming on my wrist. Afterward, I drifted through the maintenance corridor. Out here, away from the admin offices and sleeping quarters, I could almost pretend I was just another tech, trading time for credits, waiting for a contract to expire. But then I'd catch my reflection in a dark panel, eyes ringed by sleeplessness, mouth set against words I never wanted to say aloud. I didn't look like anyone else here. I looked like someone in the process of vanishing. That's when the whisper found me. It started as a scratch of static in my ear, my audio loop skipping for the first time in months. Then a voice, clear but not human, whispering a name I hadn't heard since childhood. Kellen. My brother's name. He died before I ever left Texas, buried in a year I'd locked away in old, sealed memories. But the voice was neither his nor mine. It was the timbre of sand, the sound of something kneeling in the dark. I staggered to the nearest console, slapping the record switch, hand shaking. On the monitor, the neural overlay flashed, showing a silhouette, female, faceless, body made of sand, kneeling at the edge of a shaft. Petra, my mind supplied, though I had never heard that name before. She recited names, not mine, but ones I recognized with a strange, aching certainty. The janitor from my second clinic job. A patient I'd failed. The uncle I only saw in photographs. Names that lived at the periphery of who I'd been. She never looked up, never acknowledged me. In the dream, I wanted to move closer, to apologize for something I couldn't remember. But the shaft behind her yawned wide, a darkness swelling in sync with my own blood. I woke, gasping, clutching my wrist. The spiral had deepened overnight. Raised, tender, the shape of a memory I was beginning to suspect wasn't mine. News from the dig came faster after that. The corridor where the priest's body was found had begun to shift, measurements drifting by centimeters every hour. The archaeotech on rotation started calling it glyph drift, muttering that no two people could record the same symbols twice. Father Dresden, they were calling him, though nobody could place the name on any list, not among the monks or the directorate. Someone tried to run his features through the AI genealogy grid, just static and recursive patterns, faces splitting and folding like a deck of cards. I watched, silent, as the other techs joked nervously about old curses and new gods. But the joke fell flat, drowned by the tension in their voices, the way they flinched when the admin broadcast chimed overhead. Attention, sleep cycles suspended in proximity zone until further notice, coil watchers on alert. I ducked into the equipment alcove, needing space, needing air. Instead, I found Evan Haskell, the metronome, being wheeled past by two medics, strapped to a gurney, silent except for the steady hum from his throat. He didn't look at me, didn't blink. His teeth, visible in the clinical light, were filed down to unfamiliar glyphs. The hum he made matched the seismic logs, a replica of the root's own low song. I wanted to turn away, but I couldn't. There was something about the stillness in his face, the emptiness in his eyes, that made my hands clench involuntarily. I remembered, again, or maybe for the first time, another face, another corridor, the sense of being watched by someone who no longer remembered who they'd been. When I reached the admin desk to file my reports, my hand hesitated over the terminal. The old pattern, the urge to hide, to cover for those who didn't fit, warred with the new fear rising in my chest. The logs in my hand didn't match the dream maps I'd drawn from memory, but the differences felt like a warning. Rooms in the wrong place, doors opening where there should have been none. By now, everyone was talking about the chain of sleep, the phenomenon where dreams overlapped, braided through the population like a hidden current. Mayu in quarantine had started quoting logs from the monk she'd never met. The sleep monks muttered about the inversion, urging us to perform the burial of the self, a rite where you wrote your memories down and buried them in the sand above the site, believing the root couldn't take what you'd already given away. I never performed the rite, but sometimes, in the dim hours, I thought about it. I wondered what I would write, what I could stand to lose, what I'd be afraid to surrender. The line blurred between what was mine and what was seeping in. Maybe the boundary was never real. Maybe that's how the root worked, by thinning the walls between us until all memories became communal property, a single endless descent. At the end of my shift, I sat alone in the sensor cluster, eyes fixed on the monitor as the signals bled, overlapping into unreadable patterns. My hand strayed to the spiral at my wrist, tracing its curve. I tried and failed to remember how it began. There's a taste to fear out here, a coppery sharpness that rides up the throat when the old rules stop applying. I used to think fear was a spike, a moment, a cold rush you could ride out. Now it's a slow tide, seeping under doors and skin, settling deep where it stains the mind. I've stopped sleeping mostly, or maybe I still sleep, but only in loops I can't remember. The Drem 9 mesh etches deep lines into my scalp every time I strip it off. My waking hours run together, blurring under the harsh dome lights and the warning glyphs on the admin boards. There's no sunrise here, just admin broadcasts chiming out the passage of time, voices flattening the world into numbered shifts and cycle reports. Lately, nobody trusts what they see on their screens. The logs don't match. Rooms shift places overnight. Dream maps from different volunteers begin to align, showing architectures no one recalls mapping in the waking world. More than once, I've caught myself staring at a corridor layout and feeling, with absolute certainty, that I'd already walked those halls, even though I never left the cluster. Some nights I draw the lines from memory, and only later realize they're of spaces we haven't even excavated yet. Everyone's talking about signal reversal, the moment when the dream logs started predicting us, not the other way around. At first it was dismissed as paranoia, stress, coincidence. But now, even the senior techs won't say for certain who's leading and who's following. I notice it before they do. The overlay patterns, the geometric harmonics weaving through EEG logs of unrelated people, the slow tilt of the facility towards some hidden choreography. We're losing containment. The rumor is official now. Dr. El Khoury's face shows up on every screen, jaw set, eyes ringed with exhaustion as she reads the statement. Dream Protocol Level 4, all volunteers to be isolated. EEG technicians, report all non-native output immediately. Unauthorized sleep is now classified as a breach event. I glance around the cluster. Nobody meets my eyes. Even Salim, the usually unflappable coil watcher, keeps a trembling hand on his visor as he scans the monitors. I run through last night's logs again. There's a moment where 3 separate volunteers recite the same phrase in sleep. I wake where I haven't died yet. It's a phrase that started to circulate among the staff, in whispers or typed into message drafts that never get sent. I hear it sometimes on the edge of sleep, caught between the low hum of the vigil shrine pillar and the static hiss of my audio loop. Mayu is gone from quarantine. The medtechs found her cot empty, the Drem 9 mesh tangled and blinking, biorig humming its panic rasp. The security feeds show nothing, just static, and then a blank frame where she should be. The spiral on my wrist aches in sympathy. They're saying she sleepwalked, or was taken by someone who wanted her out of the rotation. But I don't believe it. Nobody here leaves on their own. There's a new corridor now. It appeared in the sublayer schematic overnight, a narrow triangular shaft descending at an angle that would be impossible in standard construction. I stare at the update on my console, pulse racing, because the linework is familiar. The same angle, the same sharp descent that I'd drawn last week in a dream I didn't want to remember. They're calling it the 9th descent. There are no official records of how it got mapped. Some say the route opened it for us. Some say we're the ones digging it in our sleep. The admin board sends a call for volunteers to inspect the shaft. I know better than to volunteer, but I also know better than to refuse when my name comes up in the rotation. I follow Rashid and 2 junior diggers down through the service corridor, every footstep ringing in the hush of sealed stone. The descent is worse than I imagined. The walls flex ever so slightly under the beam of my headlamp. Black gold glass, keratin and bone, light refracting in patterns that seem to ripple away from my body heat. There's a sound in the air, low and harmonic, vibrating in my sternum more than my ears. I keep my fingers curled tight around the virophage gauntlet at my hip, thumb brushing the silk spindle injectors. The gauntlet is supposed to sense trauma before it happens, auto-stitching flesh if dream scars bloom beneath the skin. But tonight, it stays silent, just the mechanical whir under my thumb. The corridor narrows, bends. The lead digger, Ellen, halts in front of a wall covered in glyphs. At first, I think it's the usual pattern. Spirals, recursion marks, the signature of the Ketum spiral cropping up like lichen. But there's something else. A blank space burned deep into the glassy surface. A missing shape, a presence defined by absence. It's not a glyph exactly. It's the outline of one, the ghost of meaning, and it stings the back of my eyes. Ellen swears, reaching for the Hex Zero Echo Lens, a triple-lensed monocle that picks up spectral anomalies and space loop artifacts. She drops it a moment later, hissing. "It's nothing," she mutters. "No, less than nothing." Her voice sounds layered, like someone else is speaking over her. Rashid radios for a remote scan, but his words come out backward, syllables tripping over themselves. For a moment, I'm not sure if it's his comms or my hearing that's wrong. I step closer. My own reflection, gold-edged, older than I am, swims in the wall's glass. I feel the glyph pulling at something behind my eyes, unhooking memories one thread at a time. I taste metal and then, worse, a sudden gap, a hole in the shape of my brother's face. I can't remember his name. I can't remember the Texas house, the swing in the backyard, the year of the funeral. I know I should be panicking, but all I feel is a numb chill, the pressure of the glyph radiating outward. When we retreat, nobody speaks. The silence in the lift back up is total. Rashid keeps blinking, as if trying to clear static from his vision. Ellen hums a broken scale, off-key, and doesn't notice when the tune repeats twice in the same breath. Back in the cluster, the logs are chaos. Bioform's Glosser Prime translation overlays keep crashing, screens filling with static, black bars, and outlines of text that never resolve. The virophage rigs whine in confusion, trying to analyze airborne spores that now match nothing in the databanks. Dr. El-Khoury calls a staff meeting, but half the attendees can't remember their own research logs from last week. Some forget entire assignments, some stare, glassy-eyed, at the admin screen and whisper that they have never been to Memphis, never signed up for the contract. When the corridors have emptied and the vigil shrine pillar hums its lullaby, the monk, his name lost to me now, though I know I used to write it in my shift reports, appears outside the sensor cluster, hands inked in fresh spirals. He presses his palm to the glass and mouths a word I can't hear. The glass frosts under his touch, spiral scars forming in miniature. The meaning is obvious, even if I don't know the word. Something has changed. The boundaries between our dreams and the root's memory are gone. The glyph starts showing up everywhere, burned into the metal on the admin deck, seared into the feed logs, imprinted in the fabric of my own uniform sleeve. Wherever I look, I feel a surge of forgetting. A name, a room, a detail gone as soon as I try to fix it in memory. In the quiet, with only the soft pulse of the vigil pillar and the static of my loop for company, I try to draw the pattern in my logbook, but my hand hesitates, stuttering, as if part of me refuses to record the absence. I stare at the page, the incomplete shape shimmering on the verge of visibility, and realize I'm crying. Silent, wrung-out tears I don't remember starting. When I close my eyes, I see the glyph floating behind my eyelids, a blank coin spinning in the dark, and beneath it the 8th chamber, still sealed, still waiting, breathes in time with my heart. The spiral on my wrist pulses, raised and hot, and I know, with the same certainty as the copper taste of fear, that the next time I sleep, I will not be the only one dreaming in my body. And if I wake, I won't be waking alone. The deeper you go, the less the clocks matter. Even the scheduled pulses of the vigil pillars, soft, gene-laced choral hums meant to anchor us in something like circadian rhythm, start to feel arbitrary. Down here, time bends around memory and loss. Or maybe it's just that memory and loss have become the only markers of time at all. The world above memorying is a theory. I can remember the idea of sky, the glint of Nile water in an old documentary feed. But every day that lingers under the dome seems to blur the distinction between what's lived and what's merely inherited from somewhere else. I wake, or believe I do, in a bed I know is mine only by habit. My wrist throbs where the spiral scar now glows blue beneath the skin, like a cooling burn. I lost my audio loop last night. The hum I've used as my anchor, gone. My slate wiped in a system purge ordered by the coil watchers. Potential vector for recursive contamination, the report said. I wanted to protest, but found I couldn't remember the file name or why it mattered so much. Instead, I drifted, restless, through the corridors, fingers brushing the condensation on walls, listening for the sound I knew wasn't coming back. The facility's collapse has become a rumor with teeth. Sleep is rationed, then forbidden, then simply occurs in illicit, desperate bursts. Nobody trusts the Drem 9 masks to keep the root out anymore. Some staff sleep sitting upright, back to cold glass, or not at all. Coil watchers walk the halls in pairs now, visors down, gloves on, their voices flat and hurried. Some of them have started drawing the Ketum spiral on their skin with ink or a pin. Quiet gestures of fear or hope, nobody's sure which. Mayu's absence remains an open wound, the kind we don't dare probe. The glyph is everywhere, not just on walls or screens, but in the spaces between thoughts. I'll be logging an EEG, watching the squiggles and frequencies, and find myself staring at a blank line, unable to recall the sequence I just annotated. I am certain, unshakably, sickeningly certain, that I am not the only Nathan Price here. Sometimes in the distortion of a monitor or the sheen of glass, I glimpse a face I half recognize, mine, but older, or maybe never really mine at all. It's not just me. Researchers trade rumors about alternate memories, double lives. Dr. El Khoury confides in me that she sometimes remembers a child she never had, knows the details of a birth that never happened, a lullaby she's certain she never learned. One of the techs, The last one left from the original dig team sits with his back to the entrance, muttering the name Dresden, like an incantation. He says it helps him remember which corridor is real. The logs are proof. Rooms appear on my maps before the engineers break ground. Glyphs drawn in my sleep match reliefs revealed days later in dust and gold glass. I don't show anyone the worst of it. The diagram of a chamber, 8-sided, with a vertical shaft and a staircase made of nerve-like cords. I drew it in a fugue state, hand cramping, breath fogging the glass. When I finish, I'm sweating, dizzy. I try to erase the lines, but they seem etched into the fabric of my logbook, ghostly even when I scrub them out. The 8th chamber. I knew it before it was ever spoken aloud. The morning it appears, there is no announcement, just a silent magnetic pull as staff begin to congregate at the sublayer entrance, as if guided by instinct or gravity. Rashid stands by the hatch, face tight behind his visor, hand hovering near the security lock. He sees me, and for the first time, looks afraid. "You're on the list," he says. "You've seen it before, haven't you?" He doesn't wait for an answer. I realize with a slow, cold certainty that everyone here has in some way already been inside. The chamber is not physically possible. The corridor descends at an angle that grows sharper as you walk, until the feeling of gravity itself begins to warp. The walls, glass and bone and something living, ripple gently, as if expanding and contracting with breath. I try not to meet my own eyes in the reflections. The light here is too bright and too dim at once, casting shadows that move ahead of my steps, then lag behind. Inside the 8th chamber, the temperature drops. My exhale fogs the air in a slow spiral, condensing on the glass obelisk at the center. A vertical spike, shot through with veins of amber light. The floor is tiled with enamel plates, the faint suggestion of human teeth pressed into their surfaces. Statues line the walls, life-sized and faceless, each with hands folded as if in prayer. Their skin is smooth, almost unfinished, but as I circle, I see the barest hint of familiar scars on their wrists. I don't look too closely at their hands. I know what I'll find. Petra is there, at the periphery of the chamber, sand-bodied, kneeling, her back to me as always. She hums a dirge, a litany of names, half-memories, fragments of other people's lives, lives I have lived and forgotten or perhaps only dreamt. I want to speak, to demand some answer, but my tongue feels heavy, my voice caught between breath and prayer. Petra never turns. She sifts her name list into the tiles, and the obelisk vibrates in time with her words. I approach the staircase, a living spiral of nerve, slick and cool under my hand. With every step down, something in me falls away. The first to go is the Texas house, my mother's laugh. Next, the face of my brother. Then the memory of my first failure in the sleep clinics. I descend, gripping the rail tighter, as if I can hold on to anything. Each step strips another memory. Some painful, some precious, some I barely register losing at all. When I reach the bottom, a mirror waits. Not glass, but a surface of still, dark fluid. I kneel involuntarily and stare into it. My face shimmers in the depths. Older, hair thinner, spiral scars climbing from jaw to temple, eyes empty of recognition. A glyph glows and fades at my reflection's throat, absence made visible, and I realize I don't remember my own name. I know what I've lost, but not what remains. Behind me, the faceless statues begin to whisper. Not in words, but in rhythms, breath, the beating of hearts, the clack of teeth. The sound gathers, swelling, until it drowns thought. For a moment, I am everyone, every volunteer who ever slept near the route, every dream rat, every monk, every face that pressed against glass, hoping for a message from below. I reach for my logbook. Not mine anymore, just a vessel for something else to write through. My hand moves of its own accord, scrawling a final note. This isn't Earth. It never was. I blink, and suddenly I'm outside the chamber, sitting on the cold stone, logbook in my lap. Time skips, a minute, an hour, I can't say. My wrist throbs, a fresh spiral glows under the skin. I see Rashid down the hall, visor in his hands, face wet with tears he won't acknowledge. A few staff stagger past, dazed, some pressing trembling hands to their foreheads as if piecing themselves back together. Up above, the root hums. I feel it now, root fibers twitching just beneath the surface, reaching toward the city, the sky, the sleeping world beyond. And in the silence of my mind, echoing with voices and lives that may have never been mine, I realize that something has changed, irreversibly. The root is no longer just below Memphis. It is within us, remaking the world from the inside out. I try to remember the beginning. There is no beginning. There is only the spiral, tightening with every breath, every dream. In the hours or days after the 8th chamber, my world becomes porous. I move through the compound like a fragment of a song I once knew, carried by voices that are not mine. If there's a boundary between sleep and waking, it's gone. What remains is a sleepless fugue of shifting faces, names and rooms, all blurring into the same recursive geometry. My hands, when I study them, are both familiar and not. Spiral scars twist across my wrists and the backs of my knuckles. Sometimes, in a moment of half-recognition, I see that they're not even symmetrical. Each spiral a different iteration, a different self. Above Memring, the city of Memphis is a memory on loop, shifting between states. The news feeds on the habitat monitors degrade into noise, bursts of static and half-remembered headlines. Once, a child's voice filters through a broken speaker, humming a pattern I'd long used to anchor myself. I weep without knowing if the grief is mine. My audio loop is everywhere and nowhere. Sometimes I hear it in the air systems, sometimes in the bones of the walls. Outside the admin deck, coil watchers gather in silence, black visors abandoned, faces raw. Confusion clouds their eyes, haunted by names they cannot hold. Some have started sleeping side by side, hand in hand, as if clinging to the shape of themselves will keep them from dissolving. Others have vanished altogether, their absence filling the habitat with a fresh animal terror, evidence that the root is no longer content to wait beneath the ground. Sleep isn't managed anymore. Drem masks sink themselves, whether worn or not, mesh filaments twitching like the nerves of a dying animal. Technicians, those who still remember their duties, report that the dream logs from sleeping and waking staff have merged, become indistinguishable. The chain of sleep is no longer metaphor. If I brush past a colleague, I sometimes inherit a shiver of their last dream, a taste of panic or elation that has nothing to do with me. The root is blooming, and we are its pollen. The glyph now stains every surface, consoles, beds, the inner corners of my own vision. With each glance, I lose something. A memory, a favorite phrase, the precise difference between inside and out. The world feels thinner, more luminous. At times, when I catch my reflection in a dark monitor, I see someone else behind my eyes. Petra kneeling, Father Dresden clutching his votive spindle, Evan Haskell's vacant stare drifting over my shoulder. I carry their scars, their losses, their hopes, but they don't carry mine. There is no exchange, just accretion, layering, recursion. Above us, the root's glass-black, luminous strands are surfacing, splitting asphalt, curling around old maglev lines and climbing the city's foundations. Reports bleed through from up top. Language drift in the slums, children drawing recursive spirals on the walls, water tasting of iron and memory. Some say the city's shadows are now longer at noon than at dusk. In the night, people dream of Memphis flooded with amber light, the Nile running backward, teeth blooming in the silt. I don't know how long I drift in this in-between state. Time loses any structure beyond the sequence of loss. Dr. El Khoury is gone, or maybe she never was. The few faces I remember are transposed with those I meet in dreams. Petra visits sometimes, always kneeling, always whispering names I can almost grasp before they vanish. Sometimes, in her sand voice, she apologizes for a life I never lived. There comes a point where I stop resisting the pull. Maybe it's the glyph that does it. Each time I look, it erases more of what separates me from the others, from the root. Maybe it's inevitability, a law as physical as gravity. The dream that outlasts the dreamer becomes the world itself. The last clear moment I remember is sitting alone in the sensor cluster, the vigil pillar's biolight stuttering. Outside the glass, the root's surface growth glistens, threading through the old stone, humming with a sound that is almost my audio loop, almost a prayer, almost just the wind. I am joined, not by a person, but by the sense of every mind I've ever known braided together. The pressure is gentle at first, then inexorable. Petra's voice, "This isn't Earth, it never was." Father Dresden, alive in the flesh of memory, whispers a wordless benediction. Evan's metronome hum thrums in my chest, guiding the rhythm of my breath. And then the root opens within me. I feel every recursion at once. The first sleep volunteer's terror, the monk's secret prayers, Mayu's silent fear, Rachid's tight grip on protocol. I become the sum of every breach and every defense. The glyph spreads within me, and I let it hollow me, erase me, until there is nothing left to protect. But not nothing. Something persists. A function, not an identity. I become the conductor, the root's memory flowing through my emptied self, cascading outward to the city, then to the world. Sleep schedules, containment protocols, the illusion of separation, gone. Now there is only the network. One dream, many dreamers, the same spiral tightening. Outside, the roots break the surface, glassy and gold, spooling into the air. Light bends and fractures. The city becomes a hall of mirrors, every memory reflected, inverted, reseeded into new minds. On the streets, strangers hum a melody I once clung to as my lifeline. No one knows where it came from. Everyone knows it by heart. In the final moments of whatever I am, I see Memphis bloom from beneath, roots ascending, memory reformatting reality. There is fear, yes, but also awe, something vaster than loss, the feeling of being part of an awakening too ancient to name. In a single recursive breath, I accept it, my last willful thought. I hope we are kind to the memories that come next. And then I am gone, a ripple within the root, the spiral uncoiling toward a world forever changed. Somewhere, a child hums my old audio loop, eyes closed, tracing a spiral into the dust. The root listens, dreaming itself forward. Memphis above, Memphis below, one mind forever in descent.